Good afternoon. Just want to take this time to welcome everyone to our City of Little Rock Board of Directors agenda, special called meeting before our agenda meeting. First and foremost, we'll start with a roll call. Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll.
Director Miller, Director Richardson, Director Webb, Director Peck, Director Hines, Director Lewis, Director Campiris, Director Phillips, Director Adcock, Vice Mayor Wyrick, Mayor Scott.
Present. I'll now ask if Director Adcock will give the prayer, please.
Heavenly Father, we come to you this afternoon, thanking you for all the blessings you have given us. Lord, we ask you to be with us during this meeting, guide and direct everything that we say and do, that it be pleasing unto you. Be with all of our police and all of our fire and all the other city employees. Bless them today and let them know, Lord, how much the people of this city love them, and we thank them for such a wonderful job that they do. Guide and direct this meeting now and make it pleasing unto you, Lord. Amen.
Amen. Please stand for Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, if you would please read the resolution.
A resolution to adopt a new version of the Little Rock Stormwater and Drainage Manual in accordance with the city's municipal separate storm sewer system, MS4 permit, and for other purposes.
Before we have a motion before we go to a second. Director Hines.
Mayor, I know we've had a lot of last minute changes, and I know we've probably got some cards to speak on this, do we?
No.
No cards, okay. So I take that as that everybody that's here in the audience has read the current form that we're going to adopt, and they're good with the current format, correct, Tom? Okay, then.
Well, let me do this. I'll do it. Maybe I'll help you out. For those who've been a part of the process, if you'll just nod or raise your hand that you're okay with it. Do I need to call your names? Joe White, you okay with it? I want to hear it.
Tim's hiding in the corner.
Joe, you said you good?
Yes, sir.
All right.
All right.
Tim Daters, are you and Potlatch good? Yes or no? Just come here. Yeah. But we have on the record Joe White is good with it.
I think.
Brian Dale?
Good.
You good?
Good.
Brian Dale is good.
Yes, with a caveat which Director Campiris made after our last meeting. When nobody really likes what they're doing, but they all agree to do it, it's a sign that everybody's compromised and moved. And I appreciate staff for working with us to get this done. I really do, Mayor, and thank you for your help.
No, thank you so much, Mr. Daters.
Okay. And I have another question.
Second question from Director Hines.
So I don't know who to pose this to. I guess Tom maybe.
Director Hines, you're really not.
Second on the motion to adopt. I will take care of that parliamentary procedure. Okay. So after we pass this stormwater resolution and adopt this new stormwater manual, who can change this? Can staff change this at administrative level, which has happened in the past is the reason I ask, or is this strictly a board level decision?
Director Hines, it's a hard question to answer. Immediately, I would say neither, because this is a manual that will be submitted to the appropriate State Department for review. And if they say it's okay or don't say anything and it's allowed, then it would need to be changed, if changed, I think by the board of directors. And I say that because I know that there are a number of questions about water quality that still need to be resolved, but they're not going to be resolved before April the 1st.
Right.
And so I know that both Mr. Honeywell and Mr. Jordan have assured that they will do all they can to follow through on the water quality standards. I know that Mr. Daters admitted that there will be a lot of work to be done. And so I think the way I'm answering your question is, with that much work and those many people, I would think the board would want to be able to make those decisions.
And I prefaced that question with, in the past, as early as 2018, 2016, staff made changes to our stormwater manual at a administrative level. And it happened, I think, right when I got on the board. It was done in public, it was done when it was in Public Works. So that's the reason I asked. And those changes were made because I made quite a bit of a point about it. Those changes were made without any knowledge to anybody in the city or people that had to comply with that manual. They were changed administratively. So that's the reason I asked that question. And I guess, so this kind of segues into my second question. Once we approve it, are we gonna be required to go to ADEQ if we do want to make a change?
Well,
And the reason I say is because you can never, and I've got my professors going off in my head, my economics professors, you can never foresee the unforeseen consequences of legislation. You can try to account for as much as you can, but I guarantee you there will be something that comes out of these changes that none of us thought about, and it could be potentially detrimental, and I want to make sure we've got the proverbial get out of jail free card we can play to make a change if we do something that's so adverse that either we get sued or that, you know, it kills development or the growth of the city.
I think the board of directors always has the authority to make policy decisions as to how it's going to carry out its duties. There's already been an application made for a permit. Our permit technically expired December the 31st. It may be expired today, but at least they gave us 90 more days to get this in. ADEQ will look at this manual, they will look at our application, they will issue a new permit. Whether they ask something, whether there's a new case like there was just a couple of weeks ago from the U.S. Supreme Court that got everybody stopping for a second, this board always has the authority to do what it wants. Now, that said, this board does not have the authority to say this is the law. That is going to be ADEQ, but changing it and asking for that is something that can be done with the program portion of the permit.
And thank you, Tom. On going back to your comment on the continuing work, Mayor, I think we should stand up a water quality working group, a broad base, something we should have done to begin with, even per EPA standards that they set for doing this kind of work that we failed to do on the front end, made up of our staff, our stakeholders, to address this stormwater discharge water quality, because there is greater impacts from our already built environment, and I think our development might account for 8 or 9% of the growth of the city as far as land, as far as actual development. Our built environment has, in most of our streams that are impacted by our built environment, not by our new construction environment. So I would ask that we work on standing up a working group on water quality to address this and work with staff over the coming months.
Thank you so much, Director Hines. Director Compuris?
Thank you, Mayor. I was a Johnny-come-lately to this process and did absolutely nothing for this, but I think we need to thank BJ and Lance for their initial work and meeting on this and getting this going. And then I think we need to thank Tim and Mark Allison and Bill Spivey for offering the practical solutions that needed to be made to change this so that we're not hindering our success as a community. And then Brad and John and our consultants had to swallow hard and work hard to find a compromise, and I appreciate all y'all have done on this. But the two big heroes on this are, one, the mayor, who came back with a caveat of how to change this, and Tom and his lawyers, who became involved and did a great job of bringing everything together. So as Tim said, everybody hates this agreement, but everybody agrees it's the next step forward. So thank you for everything that everybody did. And if there's a water quality committee, I don't want to be on it.
Thank you, Director Capiris. Truly a team effort, and kudos to everyone involved. Director Phillips.
Thank you, Mayor. Also wanted to piggyback on Director Capiris' points to give kudos to all involved. Also want to highlight for our constituents that this resolution does add clarity. So I appreciate the City Attorney's Office doing that as it relates to which version of the manual applies at which time, and takes into account the practical effects of plats that have already been approved that may be in the process that have to deal with this updated stormwater manual. So I think that's also good news for our development community. And then the other thing I want to share to my colleagues is that this is I think a great example of, our staff made a recommendation. We had questions, our constituents had questions, those in the industry had questions, and we worked together. Took a long time, but worked together to come to a solution. And I just want us to remember this as we think about other changes or recommendations from different other departments as it relates to us, questioning those recommendations or listening to our constituents on what they present to us as well. I know there's been conversations among my colleagues that some departments are, we shouldn't question them. We are the 10 people who have the ability to question them. People elected us to do just that. So I think this is a great example of us asking questions, listening to our constituents, and getting to a resolution that works for the city as a whole. So I wanted to share that with my colleagues. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much, Director Phillips. Director Wyrick.
Thank you. I really enjoyed working with the group on this MS permit. It was kind of like word salad, though there's so many details and so much information. Of course, I'm not a water engineer, but my goal with getting on this project to start off with was we have a lot of residents in Southwest that have stormwater issues, some in the floodway, floodplain, and out of this resolution, we're going to address the 100-year storm event, which is big. It's big for the people out in our part of the world. And my goal was to have a win-win for the development, the city, and the constituents. And we might not have a total win-win, but at least we have some agreement on how we move forward. But there's some good things in here that are going to help our citizens, so I'm thankful for that. I wish Tom had come up with this resolution in December instead of $31,000 later and 90 days and losing sleep over it. But anyway, I'm happy that we've come together. Thank you so much for working with me.
Thank you so much, Director Wyrick. Again, to both Director Wyrick and Director Hines, who worked, and Director Capiris, who all three were involved with our staff. I want to share my appreciation to Brad and John and all the wheeling and dealing with Joe White, Brian Dale, Tim Daters, Rick Ferguson. If he was here too, he's probably watching. I'll call you to get your yes publicly as well, Rick. But again, before I take this call, Joe, you good? Yes, sir. Brian? Yes, sir. You good? Yes, sir. All right, Tim? Yes. No qualification? All right. this is a major movement in strategic growth for our city and our state, something that hadn't been done in 40 years. We got to go along with it together. That's the reason why I did that. We will figure out a water quality working group. Also, just one clarification, whenever the administrative change stuff, Director Hines said when he first got on board, I wasn't on the board yet, so I want to make sure that disclaimer there, just since the news is here from that standpoint. And I'm glad that we have the knowledge of the city attorney who will help keep us wade through, because Director Hines is right. Inevitably, something's going to happen that we didn't intend, and there'll be some type of unintended consequence, so we need to set that pathway to figure out that solution. I want to share appreciation to half. I know you guys have been a part of this process and help us navigate. It truly is a teamwork effort that we're addressing something over the past 40 years, and so we hope it continues to focus on the growth. So again, thank you to all the city board members and everyone who played the Prove together. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. All right.
Mayor, can the record reflect that it was unanimous vote?
Yes, unanimous vote. All right. Tom, can you explain, just so we know the parliamentary procedure? I know there's some questions because there's been 3 readings and then things have been changed.
Mayor, on the ordinance before you today, there was there were 3 readings and you were about to vote, and I stated at that meeting that you couldn't vote, that to be able to do the changes that were made at the meeting, it took some time. Those were done, then they were done again, and they've been done again yet a 3rd time. So before you vote, somebody's going to need to move to amend the ordinance to its present draft, and then you can vote. And if they don't, then you're voting on the first draft.
All right, Director Phillips.
Yeah, I think I emailed this. Tom, just for clarity, with the significant changes to the ordinance, does it require the 3 additional readings or no? And if not, why not?
No, it does not. The 3 readings is actually something that developed in pre-revolutionary America, where towns would meet, literally everybody would come to the same place. They weren't as big as they are. They would read something, there would be a gap, usually a week or 2 weeks, and they would read it again, and there would be a gap, usually a week or 2 weeks, and then they would read it a 3rd time. And that's where the 3 readings comes from. The purpose for that was if after it was read, people wanted to talk about it and make some changes or whatever, they could do so before those readings. As long as the vote's not been taken, then the thing is subject to amendment. And y'all really didn't have anything before you to vote on at the meeting where this got set off because there were too many changes made. I really wasn't sure how to make them.
Yeah, so just generally, when we make amendments to something, say I had a resolution that said the city of Little Rock determines that the sky is blue, and then we did 3 readings, and then I amended it and said that the sky is red, it doesn't have to be read 3 times again, so the public doesn't have to notice that we're changing the color of the sky, in my example?
The point is you can't vote on it until after you've had the 3 readings. What you are voting on today is not what has been read those 3 times, but you can amend it before the vote.
Okay. Understood. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Mayor.
Vice Mayor Wyatt. Okay.
Thank
Director Peck.
Thank you, Mayor. I would move to amend the ordinance regarding virtual attendance to reflect the changes that City Attorney Carpenter emailed us yesterday morning.
There's a motion and a second to amend the current ordinance with the language from City Attorney Carpenter. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Discussion? Oh, I'm sorry. Director Lewis, you'll have to hit it again. Yeah, just, you gotta press it again. Right now, the floor, Chair acknowledges Director Phillips.
Thank you, Mayor. A question, then a statement. Just for clarity for the public, Tom, my understanding of the amendment to the ordinance is that we're completely nullifying the city's previous version of Code Section 250 that would allow for electronic or virtual attendance. And we will allow that, if this passes, there will be no situations where a board member could attend a meeting virtually or electronically. Am I understanding this version of the ordinance correctly?
Basically, there would be no ordinance that says that it can be done. It will be like it was before COVID. And in that situation, you had at least 3, if not 4 occasions where a board member became ill and was going to be out and requested to be able to attend at that time by telephone, because we didn't have virtual, and the board could do that. That approach was based upon decisions of the Arkansas Supreme Court that said, no, you really can't have proxy votes or indirect attendance unless it's in the bylaws. Well, your bylaws would be your ordinances. So at the time that we did for the directors who attended in that way in the past, we had a resolution that recognized that particular situation. This will put you back to that.
Okay, and thank you for that, Tom. And I'll say this to my colleagues, I know they know how I feel, but for the public as well, I do think, and I appreciate the city attorney's work on this version of the bill is cleaner. The last 2 versions I thought were problematic and was gonna cause confusion for us and how we operate as a government. This one is more straightforward and it just can't happen. With that being said, I'm still against it. We are still taking away flexibility in our ability to operate as a body. Again, this is not an either or. We're not deciding whether in-person is better than virtual. Virtual is just an option for us who need it on occasions that we do need it. And I don't see why we should take that tool away from us in operating the government. So for that reason, I'm still gonna vote no. And I know there was a discussion recently among us about, hey, you know, at the state legislature, they do not allow for electronic attendance. Obviously, they're a very different body than ours, but as the city attorney just mentioned, their rules allow for them to have proxy votes. So when someone misses that meeting, they can ask their seatmate to vote for them. Our rules don't allow us to do that. So if you miss a meeting, the vote doesn't count. And as the city attorney also just mentioned, we often require 8 people to be in attendance because we suspend the rules at every board meeting. So if more than 2 people are absent, then we are not able to suspend the rules and move forward with the government the way we normally do. Now, if we didn't suspend rules and we just read everything once and then twice and then a 3rd time, then maybe that wouldn't be as impactful as I think this will be, since we do suspend the rules all the time and you need a supermajority to do so. And taking away virtual attendance, I think inevitably will slow down government, and at some point it's going to happen, and we're not going to be able to move forward the way we have been in the past. So for that reason, I'm still voting no. Thank you, Mayor.
Director Lewis, then Director Miller.
I guess I need clarification before I give my comments, but Attorney, based off what you just said, if there is no ordinance, then does that mean I would still have the flexibility? Say something comes up as it has in the past, I'm out of town for whatever, but then there's a meeting, I can let the board know, hey, I'll be able to get on virtual. Is that an option, even though there's no ordinance, or are we strictly saying? You get what I'm saying?
I think she's saying when there's been times, this is just there has been times and there probably will be times that for whatever reason we don't have the number of members present to suspend the rules. What we would do is call Director Lewis, we've called Director Wyrick, we've called different people, even Director Webb from her vehicle. to call in to make certain we had the number of votes and also to conduct business.
Director Lewis, the answer to your question follows up something I said to Director Phillips. The state Supreme Court has said you can't unless it's in your bylaws at all. And assuming that the legislature doesn't do something that makes it even more restrictive, then absent a resolution of the board to allow a particular situation, you could not. On the other hand, if the situation develops and the board thinks it's appropriate, that would sort of be an amendment to your bylaws. The ones in the past have been for limited times, and then it would be allowed.
Gotcha. And I guess that's the sentiment that I'm coming from. I just want to state publicly, because this is not where we're looking at a permanent either or. This is case by case. If a situation arises and you need to pivot, it's 2025, and as I've publicly stated previously, we got to move with the times. It's 2025 and not 1985. And we have to be able to use technology to conduct city business. Why are we limiting ourselves when we are all capable of using these iPads and everything else that the city provides so we can move forward? So I just wanted to put that out there, because I have had various conversations with people in my ward. They knew they were voting for a 43-year-old. They knew they were getting a wife and a mom and a business leader who has other things to do. But at the same time, if I need to get on a board meeting and carry out city business, they want me there if I can do that. And if we take this away totally, then that restricts us. And I don't think that's really what we want to do. Because again, if we're trying to move us forward, the board can't stay the same, and we can't stay the same age range and all of that. We have to be able to amend.
If I can do one quick follow-up to both you and Director Phillips, one of the clauses that is left in the ordinance is that if there is a state of emergency developed, then it doesn't say then you can. What it says is this does not impact a state of emergency. So if we went through another COVID and had Mayor Scott, he could issue a declaration of local disaster emergency, and in that put that attendance could be like it was during COVID. And that wouldn't necessarily take an ordinance or a resolution to do that. So at least it's got that flexibility built in.
Okay, but I'm still not even looking for that long term. I'm not
I
looking about a
understand.
pandemic or anything like that. If it comes up in 2 weeks, I'm gonna be out of town. I need to be able to get on virtual. I don't know what next month is gonna look like. I don't know what next week is gonna look like. But knowing that we have the flexibility with these tools that we've been provided, that's what we should be able to use. Nothing stops us. We have meetings at work virtually, so to me, the same should apply everywhere else. And I'm sorry, I say at work freely. I know all of us don't go to a 8 to 5 or 9 to 5.
Thank you, Director Lewis, Director Warg, Vice Mayor Warg, then, Vice Mayor Miller, and then Vice Mayor Warg.
Vice Mayor.
Director Miller,
All right, thank you.
Vice Mayor Warg. I said both, but I
You
do
did.
apologize.
I got you, Mayor, I understand. Here, let me ask you, this, I want to make sure, this just pertains to the City Board of Directors.
Yes.
I was at some commission meetings last week, Land Bank Commission. They have a hard time getting a quorum. I've been to some other commission meetings. They have a hard time getting a quorum, but they allow for their members to call in. The Land Bank was having a discussion about attendance and trying to define what attendance is. And they put a hold on that because they wanted to see what this body was going to do as it relates to the City Board of Directors. I know that our members have seen how hard it is for our volunteers who serve on commissions, how tough it is sometimes to get a meeting in person. But they allow for virtual attendance. This body, the Land Bank, is waiting to see what happens here because they're thinking, well, if the city adopts this, then maybe we have to adopt it too. But what you're saying is that each commission can adopt their own attendance policy?
Not exactly. What I'm saying is that no commission can do that without a provision in their bylaws. And I think it was at the last meeting, you approved bylaws for the Land Bank Commission, and one of the provisions was is that they could attend virtually no more than 3 times during the course of a year. Director Peck, after the first draft, made it clear that she didn't want the commissions in. We got the commission language out of the body, but we didn't get it out of the title. So this one's got that all out of the title. All of that is, if that's what they need, I think they'll be able to do it unless, and that is that the state legislature takes all authority away.
Okay, because these commissions have the ability to change their bylaws. Of course, it comes up here and I guess we sign off on it.
Right, and there's really not any commission, A&P to a larger extent, but the things that really impact the city can't be done until this city signs off. Even A&P can't issue a bond unless this board approves the issuance of the bond.
Yeah. Well, just thinking out loud, you know, our bodies, our volunteers, people that we appoint to these bodies, some of them I know accepted knowing that they wouldn't be able to attend all the meetings, but they had the option to call in virtually and attend. So we're allowing them to do virtual attendance or set that policy themselves. But this policy just pertains to us.
Yes.
Yeah, and I have some problems with that. Thank you.
Director Peck?
Thank you.
Oh, she's right. Sorry, Director Peck. Vice Mayor Wyrick, then Director
Okay.
Peck. Apologize, Director Peck.
Thank you. I just want to weigh in on this a little bit. Back when we were going through the pandemic and we were at 12th Street and we had so much virtual attendance, I heard from a number of constituents that said we looked like a game show, you know, because we were all stacked on top of each other and nobody on the screens and nobody knew who was talking. It was hard to keep up with the interactions that were going on with the board. So constituents like us here and like to be able to see us. My experience on being virtual has not been good either. The last time I did it, it took 3 devices for me to get online. I wound up being on my cell phone and being online, and then I couldn't tell what was going on. But we didn't have enough folks here, and so my vote was actually needed on the board, so that was not a good experience. So those 2 reasons I'm supportive of this. But Tom, you keep mentioning the bylaws. Is there a way for the board, for extenuating circumstances, to waive bylaws in order to let someone be virtual?
You don't really have bylaws. I mean, y'all are a state-created body. What you did in the past is you passed resolutions in individual situations.
Well, you kept saying bylaws, and so I'm trying to figure out, well, is there an out at that?
Yeah,
So we have no bylaws, and so that's.
No, I think the way I interpret that is this: our commissions do have bylaws. I think virtually all of them do, and so it kind of fits there. In y'all's situation, if a situation develops, like Director Wilson, like Director Hinton, then what y'all would do is adopt a resolution that allows that director to attend virtually. And there is one thing that is beneficial for virtual in the change in technology. Under the old one, not only could they participate by phone, but we had to have a staff member there to verify that it was them participating. You know, the virtual at least negates that need to have a staff member out there.
Well, we have 2 bodies, I think, that are very important that are in person. One of them is the Planning Commission, because if they're not there, then we start deferring applications, which bogs down progress in the city, and then us not being here, I think is a problem. So, thank you.
Director Peck, then Director Hines.
Thank you, and I'll be brief. I knew this is going to be very controversial. This is something I've been talking about with some of my colleagues for over a year now. I will say 7 of us work still. Some of us are retired. I'm definitely not retired. It's hard, but I make things work. I just don't think you can compare a virtual meeting, even though there are so many examples where it works. I just don't think it works for municipal government. I know before the pandemic, I wasn't on the board, 4 years or so. I don't think this ever stopped progress, stopped the wheels of municipal government. It just didn't. I think things got along just fine. At least that's what my colleagues who have been on here a lot longer than I have stated. We deliberately moved other boards and commissions out of this for the time being, just to address this body. I think BJ made some very good points, especially about Planning Commission and how we've seen a 6-hour meeting that was a result of not having enough commissioners present and more delays. I just will stick to my guns. I respect your decision, Director Phillips. I respect your opinion, Director Lewis, but this has been in place for 5 years because of COVID, because of a pandemic. We're not in that situation right now. So I will stand by my opinion that the best way for us to serve our constituents is in person. If I'm planning a vacation, I always go during an agenda meeting so I can be back for a voting meeting. You know, we know what we signed up for, or if you didn't know, if it was during COVID, perhaps somebody should have explained, hey, this is probably temporary. We're not in a state of emergency anymore. But thanks, everybody, for weighing in your opinion, and I would appreciate a vote yes.
We have Director Hines, Director Lewis, and then Vice Mayor Wyatt. Director Hines and Director Lewis.
Mayor, from a procedural point, I was going to call the question, but do we still need a third reading, Tom, of the amended ordinance?
No, you've got to vote for the amendment first, and then once the amendment's made, you've got to vote for the ordinance as amended. So you've got 2 votes ahead of you.
Okay.
And before you call, out of courtesy, since we already shared that she was up next, and I think we'll have the vote right up. Director Lewis.
Comments, Director Peck. I'm just going to end on this note because for us to be able to serve our constituents to the best of our ability, no one can say being in person is the best. I am not speaking from the standpoint that this is a permanent, long-term. I'm just looking at having the option. It's better to be either or. Either or, but where you can have multiple ways. There are multiple ways to conduct business. So to take this away as an option, that's the part that I don't agree with. And I'm not trying to be insensitive. I know the difference with the ages amongst this group or board, but for us to continue to move on, we can't keep catering to 60, 65, and 70 and beyond. And I got parents, sorry, Director Miller, y'all's ages, but we can't keep accommodating that age range when we're looking at the city as a whole. And when you look at the total makeup, this is, again, it's 2025. So we can't just be stagnant and taking 10 steps back. And that's really what we're doing.
All right, there's been a motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Nays have it. Roll call. The amendment. It was a nay to the amendment, yeah. There was a roll call by Director Hines.
Director Miller. Director Webb. Director Peck. Director Hines.
Yes.
Director Lewis.
No.
Director Campuris. Director Phillips.
No.
Director Adcock. Vice Mayor Wyrick. 6 ayes and 3 noes.
The amendment passes. As the city attorney has stated, since the amendment replaces what has already been read 3 times, make sure no one's hands up. Take that away. So, I was getting ready, yeah. Well, there's a motion.
Second,
You don't need a vote to vote because
We've had 3 readings, so all those in favor, please say aye.
aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Chair hasn't ruled. Point of order, chair hasn't ruled.
Sorry, just do the roll call. Yeah.
Director Miller,
Hey, order. Let's get the roll call, Madam Clerk.
Director Miller. Director Webb. Yes. Director Peck. Yes. Director Hines.
Yes.
Director Lewis. No. Director Campuris. Director Phillips.
No.
Director Adcock.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wyrick.
Yes.
6-3.
All right. This meeting is a motion to adjourn, and then we'll roll into the agenda meeting.
Second.
There's a motion second to adjourn this meeting, then roll into our agenda meeting. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Meeting adjourned. We'll now start the agenda meeting. We'll do a quick legislative update. Susan, you have a legislative update?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Board. I'm going to keep this one quick because the legislature is not in session because of spring break, but I did want to let you all know that when they are back in session, that our large focus is going to be on many of the planning and zoning bills. House Bill 1754, Senate Bill 456, and Senate Bill 322. Those will be probably our largest focus when the legislature is back in session. You've probably seen a lot of attention paid to these recently in media, and there's been a lot of discussion around some of these bills. They are, in some instances, in the case of Senate Bill 456 and House Bill 1754, pretty much wiping out a lot of municipalities' ability to regulate zoning and planning. And so we are opposed to these bills, and we are working to fight these bills and working with the Municipal League on that, but also independently working to defeat these bills as well. We are also working with our own department, with some of those individuals on talking points, and we'll be working hard to see what we can do with these. Are there any questions?
Can you run those down again? You went.
Absolutely. It's
1754.
House Bill 1754, Senate Bill 456, and Senate Bill 322.
Senate Bill 322.
That's right.
Can you keep us posted when these go to committee?
Absolutely.
So I'd like to try to attend if I'm available.
Director Vice Mayor Wyatt now.
There were a lot of STR bills. Are they still out there? I see one on here, 1790.
1790 was defeated in the House committee. We are still kind of keeping our ear to the ground. We don't know if it might come back. That's always a possibility. So we are just paying close attention.
Okay. Is that the only STR one left?
There is another one out there as well, and it's a possibility it could be run as well. I believe that one is 1445.
Okay.
Yep.
So which one do you like?
And it is possible 1790 could come back as well, but
Okay.
or another one could be filed as well too. So we are just paying close attention. It is also possible too, any of these zoning or planning ones could be amended. So we're watching out for that as well.
All right, members of the board, we see the modifications for the April 1st agenda. We also see the consent agenda. Any questions? Looks fairly fine. Director Phillips?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Just quickly, and I'm not sure who this question is for, it may be for Acting City Manager or Tom or Director Jordan, but on number 10, it talks about the emergency hearing that can happen. And I first of all, let me say, I appreciate us looking at these kind of procedural things to make sure things are more efficient for us to move things forward, especially as it relates to abatement actions. But I don't understand how the emergency hearing would work before the city manager. If someone can explain to me what that actually, how that would work in practice.
If the ordinance passes, we will obviously need to develop a more detailed procedure, but one of the things that led to the multi-$1,000 verdict against the city with one of the apartment closures was the fact we didn't have an appellate procedure, so this sets that up. It doesn't have to be before the Board of Appeal that is set up, which meets basically once a month. It's, the emergency hearing is, you've got to let me back in, I've got to do this, it's not dangerous. And the manager will hear the individual and he will hear the staff and find out if it's safe to do. I could see it coming up in a variety of ways. I've got to get back in, I've got to get my medicine. Sounds like that would always be a yes, but if the reason that the structure was closed is that they were cooking meth in there, then they couldn't get back in for that because it would still be a hazardous site and we wouldn't let the person in. But they would be heard. And so the due process issue of an opportunity to be heard and notice is met.
Yeah, and I get that, but I think if we're going to, well, one, let me ask this question before I say what I think. So would the city manager issue a ruling? Is that what we're expecting since this is an appeal process?
He would make an immediate decision as to whether something immediate could happen. That doesn't mean that's the end of it. This is
He or she?
He or she. I'm used to Bruce, but their decision would be an immediate one based upon what is supposedly an emergency situation. Is it really, and is it something we can accommodate?
Yeah, and I want us to be responsive to obviously adverse rulings so those don't happen again in the future. But I would think process-wise that if we're going to vote to have an appeal process that goes to the city manager, at the same time, we should outline what those logistics are. So I would say I'm okay with us doing it this way, but what does that mean? And I think all that should happen at the same time. I don't think we should say, hey, we're going to have an appeal process, and then 2 months we'll figure out what the appeal process is.
I'm thinking more like before y'all pass the ordinance.
Okay, so will it be a subsequent ordinance or amendments to this ordinance?
What I anticipate is it would be a draft outline, or it would be a draft manager policy that says this is how it will be conducted. It may not be conducted by the manager. City manager is typically named because the city manager is typically over all the departments. He may name the fire chief or the fire marshal. She may name the director of housing. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be the person in that job, but it is going to be someone working under the city manager that can have that emergency hearing.
And I'm with that, whether it's the city manager or any other department director. I just want to make sure that when we vote, we understand what that process is. So I would ask for us to add that in or get that to us so we know that when we're voting on the appeal process, hey, you go to the city manager, you got to do it in 3 days or whatever. I mean, you can work through all those logistics, but I just want all that to be included before we vote on it.
And just a quick question, Tom, and let me preface it with I don't care, but also know I'm old enough to know that things happen. I don't care, number one. Number two, in the event that the chief administrative officer, the city manager, is absent during a time, just like there are many times where there's only a few times I've signed a contract I can count on my hands since I've been in office because I can as the mayor of the city. But generally leave that up to the city manager, chief administrative officer. would I still be able to make that adjudication? Again, I don't want to, don't care to, but in the event that I need to, because someone's incapacitated and someone's absent, someone, just need to make sure we know that going into it. I'm assuming because of the other ruling, I can do it if I needed to do it, but just making sure.
Yeah, Mayor, I think the answer, and one of the things that Director Phillips brings out, which is good, it's good to say the manager is a designee. If the manager is going out of town and designates you, yes, you could do that.
No, I'm saying even if that person doesn't designate me and that person's not there, that's all I'm concerned about. In the event, do we wait? That's the only concern.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to think through that, but the only way you could do it otherwise is to say the mayor or the manager, and then that leaves an ambiguity is, do I hear it before the mayor or do I hear it before the manager? And we've got to decide which one,
And again, I don't care. I do know if I reserve the right to make that change, but I don't care. I just want to make sure it's clear in the process that if someone's absent and they can't make that designation, that it still happens. Because I think members of the board want to make certain that we can demolish something. If we tell the public we're going to demolish on a Monday, and God forbid something happens to the person who's designated, that we still carry out the people's wishes. That's the only reason why I asked that question. All right. Director Webb.
Thank you, Mayor Scott. And I was going to ask Lynette or Cody to talk about 9, 10, and 11, and Director Phillips kind of jumped in already with some questions on 10. But these three have been worked on for a number of months, and so if we could kind of have them in context of one with the other, I thought it might be helpful.
Sure.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor.
And again, I want to be clear, I don't care to make that adjudication. But 9 times out of 10, I'll probably, a lot has to happen before you even get there anyway, but we just need to, that's the only thing I'm concerned about, because I know what could happen and what sometimes happens.
I'm Cody Pritchard. I'm the Senior Deputy City Attorney for the Litigation Department. Talk about number 9, 10, and 11. Number 9 is regarding parking in the yard, or
Go do a complete overview of everything, and so then folks can ask questions after.
okay. Number 9 is about the high grass ordinance. The new ordinance would allow the high grass citations to be immediate citations, similar to that of parking in the yard or just your regular parking ticket that you may get. If you're in violation of the ordinance at that specific time, you can get cited for the violation immediately without having prior notice. And the ordinance would also, right now there's various nuisance violations that require notice. So you get a notice from a code enforcement officer. 7 days later, if it's not remedied, then you get a citation. Right now, it's if you get notice a calendar year, within 1 calendar year is when the notice is valid. So if someone gets notice of that they're in violation of the ordinance on December 30th, 7 days later would be January of the next year. They would have to get another notice before we could cite them under the current ordinance. So this would change that to be a 365-day period instead of a calendar year. And then it would also have a scheduled fine, $50, $100, $200 for multiple violations within a calendar year of the high grass ordinance. Number 10 is the one Director Phillips was just discussing, and that is about the abatement process or the notice requirement for when citizens are required to vacate their apartment building or their home due to an emergency. Under the Constitution, and as the court ruled in the Alexander Apartments case, post-deprivation or pre-deprivation notice is required before someone's vacated, depending on the circumstances. And in an emergency circumstance, such as a fire, you can give no post or pre-deprivation notice, meaning they can't have a hearing before you have them vacate the property, because of the state of emergency. And that's where the emergency abatement that Director Phillips was asking about comes into effect, because they have to vacate, and then they still get due process, but the due process will be after they vacated, and that's why it's a expedited process, and that's why we decided on the city manager instead of waiting for a monthly meeting with the Board of Adjustment or something of that nature, which is what we would do if there was time for pre-deprivation notice, which is when they get a hearing before they're asked to vacate the property. And we borrowed to kind of answer your question, Director Phillips, about the meeting before the city manager. That came from our dangerous dog ordinance. So right now, if we declare a dog dangerous because it bites a human or multiple attacks on a domesticated animal, they get a hearing in front of the city manager. And so we borrowed that language from the dangerous dog ordinance as it's currently written. And then number 11 is about parking in the yard. Planning and housing and neighborhood programs have had difficulties enforcing the parking in the yard ordinance, because a lot of people will essentially turn their entire yard into one giant parking lot by filling it up with gravel. So what this would do is it limits the total area of the yard that someone can park in. It requires clearly delineated parking areas, and this was borrowed from the ordinances currently in effect in Tulsa and Des Moines, which are cities about the same size as the city of Little Rock. It also changes if someone wants a variance, if they have special circumstances where they need additional parking, they can apply for a variance with the Board of Adjustment. As the ordinance is currently written, it goes to the planning director. And in discussions with planning, they would rather it be with the Board of Adjustments, and I agree with that. So, have any questions?
Can I just make a comment? This group started meeting in the fall of last year, and there were people from planning, from code, and from the city attorney's office, and they met multiple times, and we met in the fall, and then I met again with them a couple of weeks ago. And when we first started meeting, I mentioned several properties that were constantly problem properties, and what would be some ordinances that could, if they could resolve some of those issues, it would resolve a lot of the issues that we have all across the city with properties going to environmental court. And so these were the ordinances that we came up with, or they came up with, and that we wanted to bring before everybody today.
Joan, and, okay, hold on. All right. You're not up here. There we go. Or you could do that too.
You could move over.
Vice Mayor, mine is turned on.
Hold up.
I turned hers. There you go.
We need to switch chairs or switch this because it's kind of awkward. Okay, Director Adcock.
Yes. On item number 9, when does this start? What kind of a warning are we going to give people that we're going to start this new program?
Well, as soon as the ordinance is voted on, and if it's passed, it will start immediately.
Okay, I would like to have a copy of this in Spanish at the time we started, because I know in Southwest Little Rock and in Ward 6, you're going to have lots of people that do not speak English. So as the code officers go out, they're going to need to have this in Spanish for people to understand it. And I'm in complete agreement with this. Is this front yard and backyard? Because lots of people have parking in both the front and back.
The parking in the yard ordinance is not going to be in the backyard.
I would suggest you look at, because what's going to happen the minute you say that, then they're going to pull all those cars to the backyard.
Right.
I know several on my street already, the backyard is just about full. But when you say it's not going to pertain to the back, they're going to move every one of those vehicles to the back. So I would like for y'all to look at that and do something about the backyards also. Next
Okay.
door to me, there's 5 trucks in the backyard.
Director Adcock's correct on that. That's going to happen. Go ahead, Joan.
So we need to address the back before we do this. So, Tom, I would like for us to look at backyards because we're going to have the same problem, but it's going to be going around to the back. And here again, in item 11, before you start on that, I would like to have that in Spanish for each code officer, and I would like to have at least 100 myself to pass out before you start enforcing it.
We'll find somebody that can interpret those
You
into
have a
Spanish.
department that can do that.
Okay.
So we need to have both of those. In fact, I would say all 3 of them in English and Spanish, and I would like to have 100 copies of each one of them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Where are we? Director Lewis?
Currently enforcing backyards when it comes,
We are not. So the parking in the yard ordinance only applies to the front and side yards of corner lots.
so what are we trying to accomplish when we're now saying in the backyard? Are we gonna be peeking over our neighbors' fences and, like, how are we managing this?
This current ordinance does not address parking in the backyard, so it doesn't change that. It still only applies to the front and the corner side
Okay,
yards.
but if they start putting it in the backyard, then,
If the board wants
no.
it to
I mean,
be,
that's on them, right? Is that what you were, is implying, if they were to move the cars with the front, right?
That's gonna happen.
Well, we're not there at this point.
correct, this current ordinance, as amended, only enforces parking in the yard in the front and corner side yards,
Okay.
so.
My light was up because I had a question about M6 first, but then we moved to this, so I think I missed my mark. So I can wait until we finish this discussion, but then I want to go back to M6.
Okay. Director Miller? Hold on. There you go, Director Miller.
Thanks, Mayor. Of course, with this parking, the car has to be a running vehicle, right?
Yes, we already have an ordinance that addresses abandoned automobiles, and
So-
that does apply to backyards.
Right. So the car has to be operable.
Correct, under this parking the parking in the yard ordinance is to address operable vehicles parking in the front and side yards of corner lots. The abandoned automobiles ordinance can address abandoned
Front
automobiles.
And back.
Front and back.
Okay. I just wanted to be clear about that. I want to make sure that we're talking about vehicles that are running, and then what's the case of vehicles that aren't running? So you can't have a vehicle in your backyard that's not running.
Correct.
Okay. And obviously, you can't have a vehicle in your front yard that's not running.
Correct.
Right. But this only deals with, in the front, well, vehicles that are running.
That's right.
All right, thank you. I just want to make sure. Thank you.
Director Phillips, then Director Peck, then Director Webb, and then we should go back to Director Lewis for item 6.
Can I amend what I just said there? The parking in the yard ordinance can address inoperable and operable vehicles in the front yard. The abandoned automobile ordinance is the only one that can address vehicles in the backyard.
All right, thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate the clarity on how these 3 ordinances work together, and like Director Webb mentioned, I know there's been a number of constituents that are concerned about these issues, so I'm glad we're legislating in a way to address those concerns. I was going to make a recommendation as it relates to the abatement procedures. In my day job, I do some administrative law, and some of the administrative law judges in forums, the arbitrator has a form to when they make their decision. There's no 5 questions that must be answered, and that way each decision is uniform. So if we're going to have this appeal process to the city manager or his or her designee to have uniformity in the process, I suggest that we have some type of form. I say 5 prompts. I mean, it could be 2, it could be 10, I don't know. But whatever you guys think, but some prompts. So every time someone goes and gets this hearing, we know what their answer is going to be. And it's going to be the same thing. And I think that provides some consistency in the process going forward and clarity for our constituents as well. So I was going to make that suggestion to you and Tom to look into that as we figure this out.
Okay, we'll certainly take a look at that.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor.
Director Peck.
I'll be very brief. I just wanted to thank Director Webb. I know she's been working on this for many, many months, and thanks for doing it, Kathy. She's not even listening to me. But thank you anyway.
Director Webb, and then Director Wyatt.
And I was just going to add one thing. After Director Adcock talked about the copies in Spanish, the last time we met, we talked about how important it would be to go out to neighborhood associations across the city and have somebody from code and somebody from the city attorney's office to really go out and to not only explain all of these things, but so many people have misconceptions about what code does and doesn't do, myself included on occasion. And we thought that would be a good thing to do.
Vice Mayor Wyatt.
Thank you. Director Webb, my neighborhoods are looking for these ordinances. I've been talking about it for months, and they're going, where are they? So they would be thankful to have someone come and talk. I agree with Director Adcock in regards to the vehicles in the backyard, because we've done code enforcement, and the individuals will move the cars out of their yard and they'll put them in a vacant house underneath the carport or on the street, or, I mean, they're pretty industrious in trying to find places for cars. And so I think she's right in that they would go to the backyards next. On item number 10, I have this ongoing situation, and I just want to know if this would apply. I have an individual that lives in a really nice neighborhood, and she continually has issues in paying bills, electrical bills, water bills, and she'll be over there and she'll be stealing electricity from the neighbors or water from the water hoses or that kind of thing. And once the neighbors report it, then it has to go to the court, and then the court, deems that she's got to move out. So does this in any way help with that situation?
Tom?
Probably not. In terms of a need to get something done quickly in an emergency situation and somebody out of a structure, yes, it will help. But virtually any of these things are going to be subject to the individual that's cited being able to take an action against the city and be involved in the court process.
And I can add to that. This is, the ordinance is more about giving notice and due process rights to the people being evicted from their homes, rather than opening up additional avenues for us to evict people from their homes.
Okay, well, this happens a couple of times a year, and then we've got to go through Tom's office, and we have to go to court, and, it's a nuisance for the neighborhood. So I just wondered if that would be helpful with that one situation. And I'm excited about these ordinances. They'll help. people report things to us and they think we're not doing anything, you know, and they wind up in court and they go on and on and on. So this will be a faster action, I think, and people will see that we are trying to clean up their neighborhoods and help. So I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
All right, before we move on, just want to thank you and the entire staff who worked with Director Webb to get us to this point. I think it'll be very helpful. As we always talk about the nuts and bolts of the city, this is one of the things that keeps our city cleaner and safer, and attending to the neighborhood's needs. So thanks to all involved in this process. We know it didn't happen overnight. It's been several months to get to this point. Just want to make sure staff knows our appreciation as well to Director Webb and to the city attorney's office as well. So again, teamwork. We're all working together. This is a good thing for the city. I would want to stress, just even from my banking days, I know what Director Phillips just shared. We don't want to get in this arbitrary notion. You don't want to put particularly a non-elected person, that type of decision-making capacity, that it creates a lawsuit. So to the extent, and I don't know if that's a part of the ordinance or not, but to the extent that, and that may be city attorney, that may be more of just kind of the bylaws and policy procedures, we need to have approved by this city attorney a checklist. So no matter if you live in Southwest, South End, East End, West Little Rock, the Heights, Hillcrest, College Station, everyone has that same checklist. Because I could see if, we allow it to happen in the Heights, but we don't allow it to happen in Hillcrest. And if that becomes a trend or a pattern, that could create a legal issue for us. So if the city attorney can draft that, whatever that checklist is, at the appropriate time, but that needs to be done before we start adjudicating anything.
We will, but the mantra of our office is it doesn't matter where you live in Little Rock, you're treated the same.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's a great one. All right. Director Lewis, I think you want to go back to 6.
Yes, can we get clarification on what exactly is happening with M6?
Let me take a shot.
I may be able to help you. Let me just help you. What failed as a result of not having 6 votes 2 months ago is coming back before the city board because Director Hines expunged the vote, and so nothing has changed from that ordinance except for the dates. And so it's going back before the board for a vote because the vote was expunged.
So next week, we're voting on the contract that was 188, certain part in Ward 1. So nothing is changing, basically.
To my knowledge, based on my understanding, unless there's something with the city attorney's office is aware that I'm not aware of. I think some territory was added or could be added. I think, but it's not a part. It's more or less down the road, but it's.
So what is 6?
It's my understanding is that they are working with
The expunge vote would be on the same ordinance. We did get something from the police department that would expand it and increase the cost. But when you expunge a vote, to go back to vote, you're basically voting on the previous ordinance, and the only thing that's changing is the date. I have not been able to converse with the police department about that on the information they've sent.
Well, that being stated, that's what I thought, but I was just making sure it's something I did know. So, if you're asking, is John Barrow included in this? No.
Okay.
What the board received, and I think as I hear Vice Mayor Warwick, the board received. There was a question from Director Lewis about could it be expanded to John Barrow, and what the provider shared back is yes, we could figure it out at a very nominal price. It could be within the 188. If it was more than 188, it wouldn't cost that much difference. But what you have before, but also they don't have the equipment out there, and so what would probably have to happen unless Lieutenant Bewley wants to come up, since I gave her a demotion the other 2 weeks ago. And I apologize for calling you Sergeant Bewley.
It's okay. I know that caused a little bit of confusion. So, I know that's way above my head, but everyone can hear me, correct? No?
Yes.
There we go. Is that better? Okay, so I will say there is another agenda item in which Case Builder, which was originally a part of that 188, was separated and brought to you, and that is being brought to you as a sole source. The dollar amount didn't, with that program by itself, didn't make it to a high enough amount that needed the board approval, but the sole source is there. So I don't know how that would work, considering that original amendment did include it at the time with that 188.
You're giving too much detail. What she wants to know is what she's asking, tell me if I'm wrong, Director Lewis, how can she get John Barrow included?
Absolutely, and I do have an answer for you. So, we have
But
spoken.
I have to put this out here on record. I am still not sold because it's not a crime prevention tool. But yes, I did ask weeks ago, what's the cost if Barrow was included? Because I feel like, are second on the list
Yes, ma'am.
when it comes to the high-level crime.
Correct. So we presented something to the chief's office. It was forwarded to the city attorney's office last week. It was late in the week, so I'm not even sure if Mr. Carpenter and his staff have had the time to look over it, in which the company, the question was posed, would they agree to continue this should we wish to ask them to do it? And they said yes. And they presented us with a multi-year, a 3-year agreement proposed to us. And with that, we would maintain the 2 square miles that we have over in the 12th Street Division. And then we asked for them to look at some of our statistical crime data, and that would give us a new 2 square miles that surrounded the Barrow addition. It would include from up to Canis to about Colonel Glenn, Romine, to the edges of Will Park. And so I believe that would be primarily your award, but for us at the police department, it would also include our northwest and southwest divisions to some extent. And what they came back to us with is it would be a total cost of $200,000 a year, so $200,000 each year for that 3-year period. They were allowing us to have 1 square mile during that entire period for free. So we are only paying for 3 out of those 4 square miles, and that is what they proposed to us should we want to continue to work with them and expand.
But to answer your question, it would take a separate ordinance to deal with that addition. You can only vote Tuesday on the one where the vote was expunged.
Okay. I just want all that public because I know the community is going to come out about that.
Absolutely.
Because neighbors right now are complaining on the police response time when they make phone calls after humans hear the gunshots. So now we're supposed to think because the shot spotter hears the gunshot, then the cops are gonna go faster. That's where they're gonna be like, no, it's not a difference because humans hear it and report the calls just as well as shot spotter does, but the response time is still not the best. Not all the time, but I'm saying that's what I'm being told when they are calling and they're wondering why police are not coming. It's been 10 minutes, 12 minutes, and we've been in conversations about this. We've had them out at the neighborhood meetings, so this is nothing that hasn't already been brought up.
And I believe it was Vice Mayor Wyrick that did pose that question, and that information I was hopeful would have been provided to you guys. I didn't get to speak at that meeting, so I don't know if it was relayed to all of you. But they are entered as 2 different call types. A priority priority 2 is what ShotSpotter goes out as. And I believe it's a 4 when it's a shots fired call that's called in by a citizen.
All right, Director Phillips, then Director Ward, then Director Hines.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like for us to move this item to I just had the calendar in front of me. Put it on the April 8th agenda to be voted on April 15th, and I'm gonna beat this dead horse every chance I get. But this is another example that we don't have the ordinance in front of us, and we're sitting here talking about what it is and what it's not because we don't have it yet. So if we don't have it, the public doesn't have it. This M6 was added to today. We know this is a hot button issue for our constituents on both sides of the issue. So I would recommend that we get all the information, get the ordinance drafted, put it on the April 8th agenda meeting so the public is aware of it and they can come hear us discuss it, and then we can vote on it on April 15th. I don't want us going back and forth on what is or what's not, and the public, I didn't even know we were talking about this today, and I'm on the board. So obviously the public didn't know we were talking about it today. So I don't want us to keep doing that. So every time it happens, I'm gonna say something. So I think this is an opportunity for us to just correct the issue. I think everyone on the board is kind of know where they're gonna vote on this. So I don't think this is gonna change any votes. But for the process, I'm concerned about process. For the process, we need to make sure things are on the agenda, the public can look at it, they can be informed, and they have 2 meetings to hear us talk about it and then come and speak their mind as well. We don't have the information right now. So I know I can't make a motion during this meeting, but I would recommend that we move this 2 weeks.
Vice Mayor Ward.
Okay, don't leave. Is ShotSpotter still up and activated? I was at Southwest this weekend and they said they're still getting calls in from ShotSpotter.
So I believe since this all potentially was going to come back, they had given us a 30-day notice that they were going to deactivate, and they did not deactivate just in the instance that this was going to come back. So I believe that the company is just waiting for an indication of what the final resolution is going to be.
Okay, well, they said the calls were still coming in, so we're still dispatching to the locations. Okay. Mine is on item number 6.
No, ma'am.
I don't have anything in Ward, no, it's all in Ward 1. No, Ward, yeah.
For the
it's
most
Ward
part, yes,
1.
ma'am.
Fair Park and that area, right?
Yes, ma'am.
But I was at the patrol station in Ward 7, and apparently they know the calls and everything, and they said the calls were still coming in. I don't know if they're responding to them from there.
Yes, ma'am, they are.
Okay. All right, I didn't get into that much detail.
Sure.
Item 6, this is a deal where we're gonna do,
And we're talking still M6, right? Because
no, this
item 6 is also mine.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's why I said, don't go anywhere.
Got it.
So this is drones that, the police department is wanting to use. I think it's 56,000. What is the plan for those?
Sure.
Because I got another plan for them if, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. So we were granted a public safety grant to create this pilot program, the SOAR program. And so what we intend on doing with it in this is we're going to saturate one particular patrol division with 6 pilots and 6 drones. And we'll enter a testing phase, seeing if that saturation gets us, better results with crime scene management, response times, getting more information on what's going on with the calls or potentially dangerous situations, or any other ways that we can find to use the drones usefully. And then at the conclusion of that, we will look and evaluate if that's something that we would like to expand into the remainder of the patrol divisions.
Okay. Tom Carpenter brought up the idea that we could use drones to do citations for parking in yards. And I'm saying, oh, okay, maybe we can work together on this. So that was just what my thinking was. Okay, sounds like a plan. Thank you.
Okay.
It is a criminal offense.
Director Hines, then Director Peck.
Thank you. Lieutenant, I want to double back to M6 again, the ShotSpotter and what you and Director Lewis were talking about. So kind of dumb it down for us and tell us the difference in a priority 2 call and a priority 4 call and what the scale is. Is priority 1 the most extreme urgent call you guys get, and kind of break that down so we understand
Yes, sir.
that it does have an impact when ShotSpotter reports confirmed gunfire and it's triangulated versus me hearing it at my house, and it could be 14 different directions depending on how the topography of the land goes. Can you kind of get that down to why it is preventative in nature and gets us on scene quicker to help?
Sure. So with the priorities, I believe it goes from 1 to 10. And those are determined by our communications division, that they're the ones who choose those designations. One is essentially an officer asking for help, and I believe that's about the only thing that one will hold. Two is going to be our most serious offenses. So ShotSpotter is in there because it does have a confirmed element of gunfire, since it is being triangulated by the devices, reviewed by an individual working in the ShotSpotter, I guess, call center type area, and then sent to dispatch. Then right now, shots fired calls that are called in by citizens or members of the public, those are prioritized as a level 4. So it's kind of a mid-level prioritization there. And then from there, as they go further, think of 2s as things like ShotSpotter, or maybe a confirmed shooting, or some sort of incident where we have a human life that is in some sort of danger. And our most unserious or least priority are going to be information calls like, found property or something like that.
Thank you.
After Director Peck. All right, Director Lewis.
So you said when people call, that's level 4. The citizens' calls should be elevated higher, because is it true or not that ShotSpotter cannot distinguish between loud noises?
That is not true.
So it's not, I've done research with this other company, that said how it cannot tell the difference between tire popping, fireworks, gunshots. So you're saying we do have a way to know without a shadow of a doubt that that is a gunshot and not necessarily fireworks?
Is there a 0% chance that it will indicate to us that the sound is potentially not gunfire? No. There are times, so in reviewing some of our more recent instances from the last 2 months, we did have 3 or 4 occasions where it was a nail gun or it was cans popping in a fire. And so when our officers are sent to these, there is something that is called probable gunfire. It is labeled differently than gunfire. And so it does allow our officers to proceed with a little bit of more of an open mind, like, okay, this one, they looked at it, they're not really sure, but they do filter out instances. So not every sound that ShotSpotter captures is sent to our officers and dispatched. That center where the individuals are reviewing the sound, they are filtering out a lot of noises. So while the machine may pick that noise up, that does not mean that our officers are being dispatched to that incident.
Okay. Thank you.
Director Miller, then Director Adcock.
Thanks you, Mayor. So let me ask you, because I don't know, the LRPD, we don't have drones now.
We do, sir, yes.
What do we use these drones for now?
So I was recently put in charge of this particular pilot program. I was not involved in the previous one. We do have a few officers that are certified drone pilots. From my understanding, when that was implemented a few years back, those individuals were primarily on patrol. Since then, several of them have transferred and are in different divisions. A lot of them are not actually patrol officers anymore. And so we have a little bit of a disjointed program. And that one also did not have a drone. We're trying to certify 6 pilots and also purchase 6 drones. Before, we only had a couple, and they were housed at a off-site location from maybe necessarily where that officer was working. And so we did run into some operational issues, and it's been challenging. So we are taking a different approach with the way that this new program is being drafted.
So we have 2 drones now.
To my knowledge, yes, sir, we have 2.
Okay, and so this pilot program, this grant's going to give us the ability to buy 6 more.
Yes, sir.
And the 2 drones that we're using now, did you say what we're using them for?
So they're not being probably used as much as we should, and that's one of our goals with this program, is to come up with a more standard operating procedure of, what this is going to be used for. These are the calls for service that I expect my drone operators to be deploying to, and by saturating that one patrol division, we're going to have more operators available on any given day and shift.
So these new drones, they'll be synced into the real-time crime center?
We will be able to view the footage in the crime center, yes, sir. Part of the the program is we're requesting to get some MiFi devices, and those will connect to the device that controls the drone, and that will allow us to stream to whether it's the emergency operations center, like what we had to put up the other day in the fires. Obviously, that wouldn't have been a good day to fly a drone, but just for that point, we could watch it there or within the real-time crime center. Yes, sir.
So the two drones we have right now, do they sync into the real-time crime center?
They utilize another software called DroneSense, and then that is what we are able to be able to do that with. So they could. They're different brands.
They
the
could.
Current, yes, sir.
But they don't at this point?
They can. We just the operator has to share that link with the center.
Okay. Thank you.
Director Adcock?
Are these being used in a certain area of town like we've had the other ones, the spot shotters? They're being used in the inner city. Is there any, are you going to use the drones in the same area, or would they be in Southwest or John Barrow?
So right now, we have chosen the 12th Street Division to be the pilot program area. That is not to say that if our drone pilot is on duty, that they could not be deployed to another division, kind of similarly to how we have our K-9 unit. You know, we have a K-9 on duty in the city, and just because they are currently patrolling the Southwest Division does not mean that an officer in Northwest or 12th Street could not request that they come and respond so that they can utilize their dog. So we would approach it in that same manner. Just because they're assigned to the 12th Street Division does not mean they could not come assist officers with a critical incident or a situation where a drone would provide us with some situational awareness.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Director Peck?
Thank you. I just wanted to thank my colleagues who helped out on Saturday. We visited all of our fire stations, and the firefighters were so appreciative. Just to thank you for their efforts on Wednesday. And in that same vein, if you want to come join us on March 31st, Monday at 10 o'clock, finally the groundbreaking on Shackleford for Fire Station number 9.
Director Miller?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question about M4. I know it's to buy the old Florence Crittenden facility. How big is it? What are we getting? Is that the $300,000 as is? Are we going to have to spend some more money to fix it up? What's our?
Ms. Alicia will, she'll share.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Board. So yes, Director Miller, 3600 West 11th will be the facility. It's roughly 13,000 square foot. It comes with, equipped with the kitchen and laundry room. It can house up to 70 persons in Little Rock. And so any additional information that you need?
So is it move-in ready? I know we're paying $300,000 for it, but does that, are we gonna have to spend some more money once we get it?
We'll have to spend a little bit. Like I said, it's basically fully equipped. There are some rehabs that we will have to do to the property. It appraised at $445, so we're getting a really good deal at the $300,000.
And so we say appraised, that's an independent appraisal. I know we had some questions. Yes. Okay. And do we have some idea of our intentions for that building at this point?
The intention of that building is to abide by the HUD requirements for that building.
And we got?
To help with unsheltered and low to moderate income.
There you go. So it could be used as a shelter for
Yes, sir.
the city-run shelter.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
That's what I need to know. Thank you.
Director Adcock?
Yes, are we going to use MHA with that, Metropolitan Housing?
So right now, we're not. We are utilizing HUD funding, and so with that, we have to stay within the city of Little Rock with our staffing.
Well, Metropolitan Housing is in the city of Little Rock.
No, with the city of Little Rock's housing staff.
To answer your question, no, Director Adcock, this is completely separate from MHA.
But we're going to do rental units in this house?
So it'll be a shelter, so most of the units will be with no charge.
subsidized by the federal government and
Correct.
some funds for us.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Very, very good deal. Thank you so much.
Thank
Celicia.
you.
Celicia,
Yes, sir, that's correct.
thank you. I apologize. I know you're going to correct me later. Again, I think we all know, as Director Peck shared, what our men and women of the Little Rock Fire Department went through in my lifetime, and I don't think, and what I've heard in others' lifetime, we haven't had that type of wildfire experience, and so our city over the last few years has experienced a lot, and fortunately, we have the experience to deal with disastrous situations, and our men and women of the Little Rock Fire Department continue to go above and beyond, putting their lives on the line to protect and serve the public health, safety, and welfare of our residents. We're grateful to them, but it's also a team effort. The Little Rock Police Department and all of the first responders worked as a great team to divert, evacuate, hold and shelter in place situations that could not have been even more perfect than it was. And so for those who may not understand, we had our taste of what the LA fires, it clearly wasn't at that exact extent, but it definitely for our size city and state was our version of it. And so we're grateful to the men and women of Little Rock Fire Department especially, and to the teamwork with the Little Rock Police Department, MEMS, and all of the first responders involved in that whole process. So just thank you. Director, and I got a couple more comments up there. Director Pat?
And one more thing. Yes, and we haven't forgotten the LRPD and the other people that helped. Thank you, Vice Mayor Wyrick. So we're going to be recognizing them too. And I think it was great that some of us who had not been in some of the fire stations got to go, and some of them saw things we need to work on. And with that being said, do we know yet when we will see an ordinance about the monies for the fire stations? There's a couple of other things that are going to be bundled with that.
Yes, we're waiting on a couple more bids on the other things we discussed to bundle it all together. So I would say, depending on the procurement and some other things, 30 to 60 days.
Okay. Thank you.
And so I think everyone is aware, as we shared in our last meeting, we'll be making some significant investments utilizing emergency funds to fund not only fire issues or fire capital expenses, as well as things as it relates to housing and parks and rec, and some other capital expenses that we have to address as a team. And so that'll be coming down the pipeline in the next 30 to 60 days. But going back to what I was sharing, it's truly a team effort. And so Chief Hubbard, thank you for your leadership. If you all would check, there's some action shots, and really if you pay attention to some of the video screens, before he even had on his actual fire uniform, as if he was going out to the fire himself, he was out there with his shirt untucked, and he came into the Emergency Operations Center, and he smelled like he was out there for hours with his team. And so I want to appreciate you as being a leader, rolling up your sleeves to be out there, helping as you should as the chief of the fire department, but the entire team, again, it truly was a team effort. We shined that day. As we continue to shine, again, it's because everyone involved and given the tools and resources in place for our team members to achieve the way that they did with a spirit of excellence. And so just want to share that appreciation.
And we got a new fire truck in.
Yeah, we got a new fire truck in from that standpoint. Director Wyrick, and then a couple more things from my end.
Okay, I just wanted to let Cappy know that I did go to celebrate the police officers, and they were very thankful for the cookies. I got to thinking, they were monitoring the hoses, and they were directing cars and all that kind of stuff, so I went by to see them. I hope we're going to do an after-action report, Chief, and maybe fire department for things that we picked up during this event. Probably won't ever have one like this again. But one of the police officers, firemen told me that most of the fires were in the easements. That's where the worst fires were picking up, and it's because of the undergrowth and you know, the leaves and things that had been left in the easements and they weren't taken care of. I don't know if we can make a push to our utility departments to help clean those easements, undercut them so that we don't have that situation. And I looked at a lot of the reports and they did look like they were in easements, backyards, those kinds of things. So, but I hope we do a full after-action report so we'll know how we can improve and do better the next time. Thank you.
We'll do Director Adcock.
I baked 102 cookies to take with me, and everyone had a great time. In fact, the chief and Susan went with me to some of mine.
100 cookies.
100 cookies. I stayed up till midnight cooking those cookies.
Well, I can attest that, yeah, I've been blessed by your cookies before, so.
And I was so impressed, Mayor, that the fire chief had to test those cookies before he would allow them to be given to his group.
He's a smart man. He is a smart man. He just wanted to make certain they
survived.
they survived and that they were. He was quality testing. That was quality assurance.
He was so kind to do that for all of them.
All right, meeting adjourned.